Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a ridiculously racist HOA Karen pepper sprayed me at a family barbecue, claiming that what we are doing is illegal. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the story. And the first one starts like this. When I first moved into my current neighborhood, the HOA was perfectly fine, and since I couldn't find a place that was not an HOA, my husband and I decided to move in. Being one of the only black families in the area, it was a little weird at first because it was obvious that some people did not think that we belonged or just did not want us there. It was not until years later when the HOA board changed around there was somebody on there that was blatantly racist. I've had the displeasure of speaking to her on numerous occasions, and everything she says ranges from subtle racism to it being right out in the open. She would ask me things if I was on food stamps and telling me there are plenty of good jobs driving buses or working at a supermarket, never seeming to listen when I told her that I was a teacher with a master's degree. All she would see is the color of my skin and make a negative assumption based on solely that. Even telling me that I should consider just selling the house and naming other areas within the county she thinks I would be happier in. I don't want to say too much and give away my location, but all of those areas are very low income with a very high minority population. The only other thing about Karen worth mentioning is that she is a vegan and thinks the entire neighborhood should take a stand against the meat industry, even wanting local stores to stop stocking products and only give plant-based alternatives. She never got the support behind her, but was determined that she could get the HOA to make rules against animal products based on her personal position. I have nothing against people who don't eat meat, I just don't personally follow in that mentality. In fact, in my family, when something big happens, we like to throw a barbecue and invite over family and friends. Now this one day, it was my daughter's high school graduation and we wanted to have a big party and celebrate. She had all her friends over and we were just having an amazing time eating and celebrating. HOA rules say that outdoor parties are allowed as long as the noise level drops by 10 PM. This was like lunchtime since the ceremony was at like 10 AM. I guess with all the excitement I couldn't say I was surprised to see that Karen had shown up to see what it was all about. I was not happy to see her, but I was hoping that a short conversation could get her to leave. Me just demanding it right off the bat could have caused more of a confrontation. That was until she opened her mouth. Karen, there are a lot of people here. I hope you are not having a gang meeting or something out in the open. Me, what the hell kind of thing is that to say? Do you accuse all parties of being gang related? Or is it just the black families? Karen, I'm not racist. It just looked gang related. Me, a bunch of teenage girls in dresses look like a gang? There are about 3 other graduation parties in the neighborhood. And I know that you did not accuse them of being a gang. Karen, well, they are not outside making a commotion. Me, how is this a commotion? We just want to celebrate, so you can just leave us alone and let us get back to our barbecue. I guess that was the wrong thing to say, because the moment she heard barbecue, it was like the fire moved from the grill to her eyes. I don't want to repeat the things that she started saying, because it was basically an anti-meat tirade and how we were all horrible people and ruining the world because of what we were eating. I wanted her away from my house and especially away from all the kids. I tried to lead her away from the property, but she pulled out pepper spray and point blank unloaded it into my face. I was on the ground screaming and unable to even open my eyes because of it all. I just heard screaming all around me and was totally lost until the police came with EMTs who were able to wash out my eyes so I could see what was going on. All of the kids were now inside the house because they were terrified after what Karen had done to me. She, on the other hand, was using her position in the HOA as some kind of leverage to try and get the police to side with her. She was explaining that a barbecue in this neighborhood was illegal because they were all meant to be vegan, then claimed that I assaulted her and she had to defend herself from me. I just need to mention that she was so dumb that she called me in front of black cops no less than a ghetto animal, and that was not winning her any favors. The police asked me if I wanted to press assault charges against her, and I told them yes. Karen was appalled that she was not the one pressing charges and having me arrested instead, reminding the cops that she was part of the HOA and only trying to stop us from destroying the neighborhood. Luckily, she was taken away from them, so it was safe for the kids to come back outside and try to continue having fun. After all of that drama, the party was kind of dead and a lot of kids wanted to go home after seeing this. I hated that on a special day my daughter had to witness how bad racism can get right in front of her. I know that most of you reading want to find out what happened to Karen next more than what happened with the party and my family. Well, she was charged with the assault against me and instead of taking a deal ended up pleading not guilty. That was a bad idea because her entire defense was being scared of me because I was black and blah blah racist crap. Also again trying to claim that I was the one doing something illegal by having a barbecue. She couldn't actually show any proof the HOA claimed it was illegal because nobody was gonna help her pass that as a rule. It just did not make any sense and there was no way to enforce it. She was found guilty for the assault and put under house arrest plus probation plus community service. Especially the judge wanted her to do service in those areas she mentioned, thinking I should be living in. While jail might have been nice, she might actually learn something having to be surrounded by black people and realizing that they are just people too. Also, it should be obvious, but I'll mention that she was no longer welcome on the HOA board and they of course denied knowing that she was racist, and if they knew, she would have never been given power. We still celebrate barbecues despite what she did, and so far, that was our only issue. Other neighbors were a little subtly racist, but nothing compared to Karen. They were not gonna bother showing up and pepper spraying me in the face at least. They were more the stay-at-home people and just complain within their family type of people. All I care about is being able to have a nice time with family and not worry about her showing back up again. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I am a 33-year-old man and I currently live in a house with my wife and 2 kids. I consider myself lucky as I have a wonderful life and family whom I love dearly. We've been living in our house for the last 6 years and we love the neighborhood. There are plenty of other families to connect with, something that can be hard to find, and it's relatively quiet and calm. Unfortunately, not everyone around us is friendly. The house next to us is owned by a middle-aged man named John and his wife, although I rarely see her around. He's had a problem with my family and me since the day we moved in, but I can only make assumptions about why he hates us. My best guess is that he is jealous since he does not have kids of his own and seems to hate his own wife. He is constantly watching us when we are outside, bothering us and generally sticking his nose where it doesn't belong. One time we put out the garbage cans and accidentally put them too far over, to the point where he determined that they were in his yard. We heard pounding on the door, opening it to see him, and he immediately started yelling about property lines, respecting our neighbors and all that crap. On another occasion, he reported us to the HOA for leaving our trash cans out too long. We had only done that because our cat got sick while I was at work and my wife had to take him to the emergency vet. So, most HOAs follow up on reports that they receive to see what the problem is and what can be done to resolve it. Needless to say, we did not end up with any type of violation, but we were encouraged to bring our trash cans in as soon as possible just to appease our neighbor. One afternoon, our kids were playing outside, kicking around a soccer ball as my wife and I kept an eye on them from the inside of the house. As they played, the ball ended up in our neighbor's yard and I pointed this out to my wife with a groan. We knew there was a high probability that this would cause a scene with John, but we let our kids attempt to get it back regardless. I hoped that he would either not be home or would not notice them, but unfortunately it was not meant to be. As always, John was spying on my kids, and the second the ball ended up on his property, he was making his way outside and moving towards my boys. I jumped up and headed outside myself since I didn't trust him not to start a fight with my kids. My 2 boys started to apologize and ask if they could have their ball, but were berated instantly with lines like, "Didn't your parents teach you to respect your elders?" I approached them and told my kids to head back inside before addressing John. I apologized not because I did anything wrong, but because I was still trying to keep the peace. I politely asked for the soccer ball so we could both go back to enjoying our Saturday afternoon, but he refused to relent. His wife came out at one point looking fairly exasperated herself and begged him to leave it alone and come inside, but he refused, instead pulling out his phone and calling the non-emergency police line. I could only hear his side of things and he was trying to imply that my kids had caused property damage. Judging by his face, the person on the other end likely suggested he try and resolve the situation on his own without the help of the police. It eventually came to an end when his wife tossed the ball my way and wished my family and me a lovely day before leaving her red-faced husband on the lawn. I walked back to my own house as he continued to shout at me. Things died down for a while, mostly because we did everything possible to avoid John completely and therefore did not run into issues with him. We had seen more people in our neighborhood getting Ring doorbells, so we jumped on the bandwagon and got one as well. You cannot be too safe when you have kids in the house. We did not see anything other than the mailman or our kids' friends for a while, but one day while at work my phone alerted me to someone at the door. I unlocked my phone to see John walking around the front, peering into the windows of our house. I called my wife to let her know, hoping that she would notice if he did anything that was not picked up by our camera. While it was strange, I did not have a reason to contact the authorities, so I settled for keeping one eye open. It is important to note that I own a gun, a shotgun specifically, mostly for personal protection reasons. I keep it locked away when it's not being used and the ammunition is always kept in a separate location because I don't want my kids to get their hands on it. I'd never had a need to use it outside of going to a gun range, but I was always prepared to use it if the need arose. On a warm summer evening, my family and I ate dinner and watched a movie, enjoying the breeze that drifted in through the open windows. We put the kids to bed at 8 and I stayed up with my wife in the living room discussing how my day went and what we planned to do with the boys over the weekend. We eventually went to bed ourselves and fell asleep quickly. However, I was awake about 2 hours later when I heard shuffling coming from the first level of the house. I would have thought it was one of the kids, but they always slept through the night, and if they did wake up, they always came into our bedroom to get in bed with us. I was wide awake at this point after convincing myself that there was an intruder in the house, so I woke my wife and told her to go into the boys' room and lock the door behind her. I grabbed the shotgun and bullets, loaded the weapon and carefully made my way downstairs. It was dark save for the beam of a flashlight coming from the kitchen. I pointed my gun at the figure and flicked the light on. He turned to me, clearly startled, and I saw that it was John standing in front of the counter where he had taken food out of the cabinets for some reason. I asked him what he was doing in my house and he stumbled over his words in search of an excuse, slurring and obviously drunk. I glanced over my shoulder and saw an open window in the living room. Clearly we had left it open before going to bed, and that is how John managed to get in the house in the first place. I asked him to leave and he refused, trying to convince me to let him rob the house because no one was supposed to wake up and I have enough money to let him steal whatever he wants. Obviously, I said no, and that just angered him further. He actually called 911 and told them that I was trying to kill him, which was clearly ridiculous, but I kept my cool and waited for the police to show up. When they did, my wife came down to join me because she heard the sirens and knew it was safe. My neighbor rushed to claim that I was trying to attack him for no reason. I explained that I owned the house and woke up to find him in my home uninvited. The officers turned to him and began to question him further about why he was breaking into someone's home in the middle of the night. He began to explain how he hoped to steal some food and objects, make some noise, and then sneak back out the window in an attempt to scare us and make us believe that a psycho was out to get us. John hoped that this would cause us to move away, something he had been hoping we would do for years. The police asked if I wanted to press charges and I said yes. They took him outside to talk with his wife and an officer stayed to make sure my wife and I felt safe and knew what our next steps would be. So far, we are not doing anything beyond pressing charges and putting up more security cameras to be on the safe side. I don't know what he was thinking, but we learned later that he is an alcoholic and likely was not thinking clearly. The last I heard, his wife was planning on getting a divorce, which I think is a great idea. The next one is titled Revenge on Stupid Boss. This is somehow a revenge on 2 people at once. So a while back I got a new boss, let's call him Ryan, and I tried to help Ryan get started and learn about our team, the usual. I have been with the company for a few years, so I thought he would come to me with any questions or issues. Well, turns out Ryan did not like me, and after only a couple of weeks I learned that he was talking about me behind my back to someone I knew who obviously immediately told me. Well, I went and told my boss's boss, let's call this generic white guy Carl, and Carl's reaction did not care about me at all, but instead asked why Ryan was asking me questions in the first place. This scenario played out a few more times, usually with me chatting with someone and asking for help or clarity on something I was working on, only for Carl to find out and ask, why did you talk to so-and-so? Especially if the question should have been answered by Ryan. I I learned through the grapevine that Carl had fought really hard to hire Ryan, so clearly Carl did not want people to know how incompetent he and his new hire Ryan were. So I did as I was told and stopped asking people for help, which meant I just stopped talking. But my coworkers are not dumb people and read between the lines very quickly because I'm usually very chatty and full of questions. I made sure they would not get heat for anything that was Carl or Ryan's fault, and I got the same courtesy back. Like, one time I very politely asked if anyone was providing the project updates for my project to a meeting I was not invited to. And the project manager asked if they should invite Ryan. I shrugged, and so of course Ryan gets invited because I never just shrug. Ryan does not bother going, so next time I'm in a big meeting with some higher-ups, I bring up that there was a problem with my project that another team had to solve, and the CEO demanded to know why this was not brought up sooner. Project manager sees his cue and says, "Well, we added Ryan to those meetings. You get the picture." I was slowly making it clear that everything had to go through Ryan and I was no longer involved. About 6 months in, Carl feels Ryan is ready finally to fly solo and goes on vacation for a month. And while Carl is out, Ryan gets put in charge of putting together some kind of plan for our team. Normal, who does what kind of thing. I would usually help out since I knew what everyone was working on and had done the previous plans with the previous bosses. No one else on the team has done this before, but Ryan does not like me, so does not ask me. Ryan is messaging the project manager nonstop, who just sends him the same guidelines again and does not bother me, even going as far as telling me he won't bother me with this. So I sat back and waited, watching, not asking anyone for help or talking to anyone about it. First, Ryan sends frantic messages to the whole team, dozens an hour, telling us to do very conflicting things to fill out this plan. Then Ryan has a brilliant idea not to make a plan at all, even though everyone is given a template that they must fill out. Then he backtracks and makes a giant list of every possible thing we as a team could be working on, but still not using the template. A week and thousands of panicky messages later, Ryan has to present the plan to the higher-ups. And it just so happens the project manager shifts the time of the meeting at the last minute, and so I somehow accidentally miss it. Now no one can think I had anything to do with this. Which, by the way, is great because I get the most glorious messages while it's happening in real time. Calling it a crap show and a train wreck, and one person even said it was the worst meeting of his career. If Carl's attention was to not let the company know how incompetent he and Ryan were, well, now it was very clear to all 200 of us. And no one is going to ask why I am leaving the team. The next one is titled, "Pay for the Car." So this is not my story, it happened to a friend of a friend, so exact details are difficult to get, but this is what I was told. For ease of story and to hide identities, the names I will use are Jack and Jill. So first, a bit of backstory. Jack and Jill had been going out for nearly 5 years. By the point of the story, a year prior, Jill lost her job due to the company she worked for being liquidated. Money got tight for Jill, so Jack offered to help by covering her car payments, monthly installment, road tax, insurance and fuel, so she could put the money she got to rent and utilities until she got a new job and was financially stable. Jack, on the other hand, had a fairly decent job, so was not a strain on his income. A year goes by and Jill is still unemployed, but not through rejections. She got lazy and just spent all day doing nothing around her house while Jack was at work. One day, Jack gets off work early and decides to surprise Jill on the way back home, but as he's approaching her house, he sees another car in her driveway. He parks on the street and sneaks up to the house and looks through the window to see Jill with another man. Jack was pissed, but he did not burst in there. He walked just away, got into his car and drove off. When Jack got home, he did a little digging and found out who the guy was through Facebook and found out she had been having an affair for half a year with this guy. He was now really pissed off and wanted revenge, and he knew the best way to do it. This is where the revenge comes in. Jill loved her car even though she barely used it, so what Jack did was stop all the payments that were going out of his bank account and put them onto her account as the car was in her name. It was so easy to do. As the payments had only just gone out, he had to wait for the end of the month for his revenge to unfold. The end of the month comes and Jill's bank card is declined at the shops. She calls the bank up to find out what is going on, and they tell her she has gone overdrawn because of the car payments going out of her account. Jill then phoned Jack and asked why the payment is coming out of her accounts and not his. Jack coldly replied, "Because I know you cheated on me and I'm not gonna pay for my ex-girlfriend's car," and then hung up. Fallout of the revenge, she tried to get Jack to pay for the car, even got lawsuits involved, but as she was the sole owner of the car, it was declared he had no legal responsibility to pay for her car. As she could not afford her road tax or insurance, she could not drive the car and eventually got so far behind in the payments, the car was repossessed. To pay the debt, she had to get a minimum wage job and now takes the bus to and from work. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.